was scrolling on Twitter last night, and I saw this clip of Coleman Hughes trying to draw an equivalence between the left and right's proclivities for using extreme political rhetoric. Now, seeing this clip, it was like a 20 or 30-second clip, made me really mad and really confused, because I am a fan of Coleman Hughes. I think he's a very valuable and insightful voice on the topic of race relations, and I think his work on color blindness has been great, and I've defended him in the past on this channel against the bullshit he was subjected to by Chris Anderson and Ted. But what I heard Coleman saying in this clip was objectively retarded, and it was just so shocking to me that someone so intelligent could say something so stupid. So what I hope to do now is just react to his words in context by looking at the whole panel discussion that he was a part of and just trying to understand what mistakes he's making epistemically so that, I don't make them in the future, you don't make them in the future, and hopefully if Coleman's watching this, he learns from it and doesn't make them in the future as well. So let's get into it.
General Mark Milley is a professional. He knows exactly what he's saying. And as you said, it's not like he's particularly candid with the press. This is the guy that stood beside Donald Trump when Donald Trump was like, can't we just shoot the protesters? And he was like, no. He's like, can't we just shoot them in the knees? And he was like, no. And they ended up putting tear gas on them and they went and did the Bible photo. When we think about fascism, we have to remember that there are so many signs that are actually happening. There's weaponized nationalism. There's scapegoating of minority groups. There's mythology of a better time back in the day when we were great. There is obviously the cult of the leader. There's the weaponization of the Justice Department, the cutting down of the free press, right? And now he's talking about locking up political enemies. He's talking about rounding up people and putting them in camps. These are all fascist behaviors. And the sooner we stop pretending that that isn't a word that could come to America, the better off we are, because this is a real fear that people should have. And if someone like General Mark Milley tells us that this is a real thing, then we need to listen.
Okay, so I've never seen this person before, Miss Leigh McGowan. I really agree with a lot of what she said, but to give you a sense of why I agree, she's not just saying Trump is a fascist and then shutting the fuck up, right? Like she's making the charge of fascism. She's articulating why we should take Mark Milley's characterization as veridical, and she's making very specific points about why it's reasonable to call Trump a fascist. She says mythology of a better time, scapegoating of minority groups, weaponized nationalism. So these are all specific points that people could take issue with in her characterization of Trump as a fascist. And I think it's good that she's giving concrete reasons for calling Trump a fascist. And I think just for the benefit of everyone watching, I don't really know what fascism is. I'm sure you don't. Like, we hear the term getting thrown around a bunch. So let's just consult Wikipedia real quick and see if she's on the money. According to Wikipedia, fascism is a far-right, authoritarian, ultranationalist political ideology and movement, characterized by a dictatorial leader, centralized autocracy, militarism, forcible suppression of opposition, belief in natural social hierarchy, subordination of individual interests for the perceived good of the nation or race, and strong regimentation of society and the economy. That's the definition of fascism, and Ms. McGowan seems to be judicious in her application of it to Trump. If anyone wants to disagree with her application, they can just say, look, I disagree with you on these factual points, but if the factual points are true, they can't disagree that he is a fascist. So the argument just comes down to what's factually true. If Trump does fascist thing X, then Trump is a fascist. Back to the clip.
And if someone like General Mark Milley tells us that this is a real thing, then we need to listen.
I take Mark Milley seriously. I also take the other people that work for Trump seriously, and a lot of them would not be as dark on Trump. Someone like H.R. McMaster.
I mean, a lot of them would be, Coleman.
H.R. McMaster wouldn't call him a fascist. I think he's a populist. He's a populist with some very troubling anti-democratic tendencies, but he is not Hitler. He's not Mussolini.
He's talking about good genes and bad genes at this point.
If he were a fascist, he had the opportunity of a lifetime to show us that during COVID by declaring an emergency and doing whatever he wanted, and he didn't do that.
That was when he was still surrounded by people like...
Okay. Again, Coleman's a really smart guy, but most of what he said here was dumb bullshit. So first he says, I take General Mark Milley seriously, but I take others like H.R. McMaster seriously, which is not responding to what McGowan said about the nationalism and the militarism and all the other features of fascism that we can clearly see in Trump. So yeah, that's corny. That's gay. I don't like it. And then he says, Okay, he's not a fascist, he's just a populist, as if populism and fascism are mutually exclusive. And then he says that Trump is not Hitler and not Mussolini. Ergo, he is not a fascist, which is, I feel, evasive and not, you just aren't making contact with the claim that he is a fascist, if that's what you say in response. Like, if your response to someone calling you a fascist is saying, yeah, but I'm not Hitler, I'm not Mussolini, that's not very good evidence of your non-fascistic tendencies. It's like asking, like, I can play basketball, okay, but I'm not Michael Jordan, but I can still play basketball. You know what I'm saying? Right? Like, just because I'm not Michael Jordan or LeBron James or Luka Doncic or whatever the fuck his name is, that doesn't mean that I can't play basketball. And then he says that if he really was a fascist, he had the opportunity of a lifetime to prove it during COVID. But that, again, you're just constraining the definition of fascism to these arbitrary markers that don't really have anything to do with the actual definition of fascism. The implication of what he's saying is that if he really was a fascist during COVID, he would have done a takeover of the government, locked everyone in their houses, and established martial law or some shit. Like, that's what he's trying to get at. And he's saying because he didn't do that, that means he's not a fascist. But he did do January 6th, right? He did attempt to take over the government, but fail. And this is another stupid point that I hear so many Republicans making, which is that if someone tries to do something nefarious and then they fail, then we should just treat them as if they never had any intention to do the nefarious thing that they intended to do. And let's say I have a gun and I want to shoot you in your face because I fucking hate you. And let's say that I miss. In the moral universe that Republicans live in, they would think it's rational to respond to that by saying, all right, well, you can still come over for dinner anytime because, you know, you missed. It's not that big a deal. We can let bygones be bygones. I still love you. Now, that is fucking retarded, and that seems to be the same species of retardation that Coleman is flirting with here. So let's see what else he has to say.
General Mark Milley. He was still surrounded by people who could hold back his worst interests. The second version of Trump will not have any of those people.
I think you're right.
He will be absolutely surrounded by people that will say, sure, yes, let's shoot the protesters.
I want to know what.
Okay, so he admitted that there's truth to that. Thank you, Coleman, for saying the first non-retarded thing that you said throughout this panel.
You know what the solution is, right? Like, so either he was the person who told us that he was going to have the best people in his cabinet and be surrounded by the best people, and now those best people are saying, yeah, he's a fascist. So was he hiring the wrong people and was not good at filling his cabinet, or was he good at filling his cabinet and the people who were the best people think he's a fascist?
That's a good
question. It's got to be one of the or the other, right?
Another great point. Republicans try to evade all criticism of Trump by saying that the woke, mainstream, liberal media, they just have a bias against our great leader, but that ignores the fact that people who your great leader picked himself don't fuck with him. They think he's ass. How do you square that circle? Moving on.
Well, I would say look at the results. You had a strong economy, low unemployment, a secured border, no world raging at war. All the failures.
Okay, this guy is just retarded. We don't need to listen to anything he has to say. Again, just not making any contact with the claim of fascism and whether or not it's justified. So I'll just skip over him.
Just to be clear, Mark, we're talking about Trump's character. We're talking about Trump's character
Yes.
in large part. What kind of leader he is. So I understand the economic case for Trump and all of that, but on the question of did he hire good people who then, after working with him, determined that they did not believe that he had the character to be president of the United States, or did he just mess up and hire a lot of bad people?
Well, but this is not a hypothetical. Donald Trump is not a hypothetical president. He was the president. You can go back and look at his record.
Just dodge the question there. She asked him a very clear, very binary question, like, did he employ the right people for his cabinet, or what else did she say? Well, let me repeat the question.
I understand the economic case for Trump and all of that, but on the question of did he hire good people who then, after working with him, determined that they did not believe that he had the character to be president of the United States, or did he just mess up and hire a lot of bad people?
Well, but this is not a.
Yeah, so it's one of two paths. Either he's incompetent or his employees are incompetent. And if his employees are incompetent, that should make you question his ability to judge his employees' competence and just run the country. Why are you hiring fucking retards that are putting that disrespect on your name?
Had the character to be president of the United States, or did he just mess up and hire a lot of bad people?
Well, but this is not a hypothetical. Donald Trump is not a hypothetical president. He was the president. You can go back and look at his record.
He was the
to
president,
see
and
that
40 out of 45 of his cabinet members will not support him. His vice president will not support him.
Facts.
His generals will not support him. He
Facts.
was the president. He was terrible.
Factual.
They're saying we worked as close as we possibly could
I
to
get
him,
it.
All
and we
facts.
won't hire
I
him
get it.
again.
The Democrats
Those of
have-
us in the regular world, those of us in regular America who didn't work right next to Donald Trump, we don't know. So we have to trust the people that worked as close as possible to him. And the people who worked as close
Straight
as
up.
possible to him, 80-90% of them are saying, do not hire this man again. He is a
I
danger.
get it. You've
So
got
maybe
nothing
he
to
should
run
get
on
the
except
second best
fear of Donald
I have
Trump.
lots of
Again, more retardation. I get it. You've got nothing to run on except fear of Donald Trump. No engagement with the claims being made about this guy's character. No. It's just they pussy. I get it. They have nothing to run on except running away from a fucking question. They just can't answer a question.
Lots of things to run on if I was a Democrat. It's not just about fear. It's about saying this man is a danger, and the people who know him best say so. If you want to talk about what Kamala Harris is running on, that's a completely different conversation. But this man is an absolute danger. The people closest to him are saying
This
so.
man there have been 2 assassination attempts against this man because of this irresponsible rhetoric about someone being a danger.
Wait,
Can
hold
we
up.
More bullshit. Okay, so there have been many assassination attempts on Hitler. Let there be as many assassination attempts against Hitler as you want to be. That doesn't change the fact that Hitler was an objectively dangerous figure in human history. The same is true of Trump. Let a nigga try and assassinate him like 6, 8, 10 more times. It doesn't change the fact that he's still a threat to democracy for reasons that are specific to him and his character and things that he said, things that he's likely to do. It's just a non sequitur to say that because somebody attacked him, that makes him less of a threat.
Can we stop
Because
it?
he is a
Okay,
danger.
Mark,
though.
Mark,
No, we need
wait
to
a
stop
second.
this nonsense.
Hold on, Michael, because I had a feeling that you would say that, because that comes up every time someone talks about Trump and what he said he's going to do and what kind of president he might be. But here is Donald Trump just today talking about Kamala Harris.
My message today is very simple. No person who has inflicted the violence and terror that Kamala Harris has inflicted on this community can ever be allowed to become the president of the United States. We're not going to let it happen.
Okay, so I'm so glad that she played that clip because it's just more evidence of the double standard that works in favor of Republicans here. You have Trump saying of Kamala Harris that she's inflicting violence and terror upon a community. So all he's doing there is smearing her. There isn't a shred of truth to that accusation, and nobody calls him out for it because we've gotten used to 8 years of this bullshit, which we shouldn't have. Okay, the situation we're in right now is not normal. But when historians and journalists and political commentators make what should be a non-controversial observation about the similarities between Trump's behavior and the definitions of fascism and authoritarianism, then you get retards like this blue tie guy saying, we gotta stop with this nonsense, without ever making any substantive criticism of that observation. They just say, oh, blah, 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 I don't want to hear it, I don't like it. And this nonsense needs to stop. We can't keep treating these people as if they're making cogent and intelligent points. Moving on.
Is that irresponsible rhetoric?
No, he's talking about a policy issue. He is talking
he's
about
saying
her
she
failures.
has inflicted.
He's talking about a policy issue by saying that she's inflicting violence and terror on a community. Inflicting violence and terror on a community is when you fly 2 planes into buildings. That is separate from a nuanced and rational criticism of someone's policy prescriptions. That's not what he was doing here, and for this retard to act like he was, we should meet this kind of character with contempt and disgust and make them justify their stupid statements. Why are we treating his opinion like as if it means anything? I have no idea.
Violence and terror.
He's at an immigration event talking about immigration. He's talking about her policies that have allowed all these
Okay,
violent
so
gang members in.
here's another example. Let's listen.
It's a choice between communism and freedom. This is communist, this is Marxist, this is fascist. This is a radical left Marxist, communist, fascist. She's a Marxist, she's a fascist. Comrade Kamala Harris. Comrade Kamala Harris.
Again, none of them call this shit out. It's only when it's their guy that they get pissed about it. Make note of that double standard and make sure that it stops operating, because it's tearing the country apart.
If Comrade Kamala Harris gets 4 more years, you will be living a full-blown banana republic ruled by an anarchy and a tyranny. They're scum. They're scum. And they want to take down our country. They are absolute garbage.
What about that?
Both sides use absolutely extreme rhetoric. I would argue that is the bread and butter of a political campaign. So let's not play the game where we...
There is no equivalence, Coleman. What you said was fucking stupid, indefensible, disgusting, reprehensible, all the bad words. You should, I was tempted to say you should retire permanently, but I feel like there might still be some hope for you, okay? There is a categorical difference between what some lefty dipshit on Twitter says when they're celebrating Trump's assassination attempts versus mainstream and key figures of the Republican Party endorsing Trump's rhetoric, mimicking it, failing to condemn it, and just allowing it to run rampant over the course of 8 years. Okay, these are not equivalent phenomena. And to pretend that they are is to contribute to the destruction of our country. You will never see an Obama or a Biden or a Kamala talk in the same way that Trump or any of his Confederates do. And that is a meaningful difference that should be acknowledged. And it's so sad and so depressing to see Coleman fail to acknowledge it here. But let's let him continue.
I'm really exhausted by this. Both sides do this thing. This is insane. This is literally insane. You have
totally right.
up there saying, we can move forward. We can do better. We can have a joyful future. And this guy's saying people are scum and human garbage and immigrants are slitting your throat. And we're going to round up people and putting them in camps. And you're going, both sides.
No, well, let's say that Coleman is right.
For me.
And then that both sides are bad. Well, who breaks the tie? The people who worked closest with Donald Trump say, don't elect him president. And all of the people who worked with Kamala Harris or for Kamala Harris are supporting her.
Well, that's, that's exactly true.
So the rhetoric doesn't concern me as much as what the people who know Donald Trump would say he will do and what we have seen that he has done.
I sort of disagree with that. I think you should take rhetoric seriously and the opinions of close colleagues seriously as well. But yeah.
So I don't care about the crazy thing Donald Trump says because we kind of know that he is hyperbolic and kind of not smart. But
this is a really insidious feature of Trump's presidency that I think we fail to appreciate, which is how much he has normalized talking like a jackass on the global stage and how he consistently fails to pay any reputational costs for making statements that would end other people's lives and careers. So, yeah, I just think it's bad that we have a social atmosphere that discounts all the shit that Trump says and never makes him pay for it. Because what other sphere of human culture works like that? Like, if you talk like a jackass, if you are an objectively evil person, and people fail to treat you like one, then what does that say about our culture? It says we fucking up, frankly.
The things that he has done, like that is the question that we are talking about. Not what people say about him, but what people know about him.
And I think, but this is where, and I think from 2015 all the way through today, that's the mistake that people in Washington, D.C., the Acela Corridor, media, you name it, the people who count aren't the people who worked for him, aren't the people in Washington, D.C. It's the millions of Americans who will be the deciding vote.
Donald Trump has never won a popular vote.
They will be. That's not how we elect our presidents, but that is the deciding vote.
You're talking about that's who decides, right? The American people have never.
No, technically the electoral
majority of the
college
American
decides.
That is decided
of the
by
American
the
people have never
It's
said
not.
Donald
If the
Trump
people
should be
decided,
Great, so
then
be a
the
threat to
people would
democracy and
say,
throughout
I know
the electoral
Coleman.
college.
I know Coleman had something to say. I'm gonna let
I
you.
think that so often the rhetoric collapses into either he's a fascist or you think he's the greatest president since Abraham Lincoln. The truth is he's not a fascist. He's had plenty of time to prove that he has a fascist ideology. He doesn't. But he's also very flawed. And this is why it's a legitimate point that so many people that worked for him don't want to see him as president again. And that's not something I think you can easily dismiss.
Disappear from.
Okay, so I obviously disagree with Coleman's assessment that he is not a fascist. And I disagree with it because Coleman doesn't really say anything substantive in support of that case. He just says he's not a fascist because he didn't do anything during COVID. And he didn't make any attempt to engage with what McGowan was saying about the nationalism, the militarism, the social hierarchy, the genetic shit. Like, all of that is fucked up, and it's more fucked up in a specific way that warrants the use of the term fascism than just saying that he's deeply flawed. He's deeply flawed and a fascist. Okay, there's no need to beat around the bush about it. There's no need to attempt to assuage his base by saying that he isn't a fascist. This is all obscurantism, and it's dangerous obscurantism. It is putting the future of our country at risk. And the vibe I get whenever I see people talking like this is that they care more about the perception of being objection and unbiased than actually being objective and unbiased. And that's an issue. We all just got to call it like we see it and reason honestly about definitions and their applications. And it's really disheartening to see Coleman fail to do that here. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching. If you fuck with my vibe, like and subscribe. See you later. Have a good one. Bye-bye.